unto others. We're all sisters and brothers. Do unto others as you'd have them do to you, my brother.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to this day. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like you don't belong? Maybe a place that you've arrived to. Maybe it was a dinner party. And you went there and everybody was in tuxedos and you felt a little underdressed, or you just didn't feel like you fit in with that particular realm of society. I think at certain times we've all felt like that. You know, a few years ago we were singing out west on our West Coast tour, and one night in Sacramento, after the concert was over, the promoter and some of his entourage wanted to host my family and I at a local restaurant. And so they put us in a couple of vans and we took off for the restaurant. As we got there, everyone entered into the restaurant, and my wife and I lingered back because she was on the phone. When she finished her conversations, we got out of our van and began to walk towards the restaurant. This lady, she jumped out of the bushes and she grabbed me, begging me to help her. And at first I was startled because it was dark and this lady jumped out of what seemed like nowhere. And I noticed that she looked kind of distraught. Her clothes were kind of worn and tattered, and I wasn't sure if she was homeless or not, but she appeared that way. And I said, well ma'am, what's wrong? And she says, I haven't eaten in 3 days. And she says, I've been waiting for somebody to bring me some food from the restaurant. She says, and I've asked the manager here, and they've run me off the last 2 days. And I asked her name, and she told me. I said, well, what's your story? She said, I came out here on the promise of a job. She said, I'm from Chicago. I jumped on a Greyhound bus with the last few dollars that I had because I was promised that I was supposed to start work on Monday, and I spent all my money to get here. And when I got here and showed up for work, they said, oh, we're sorry, ma'am, this position's already been filled. She said, I don't know what I'm going to do. She goes, I have no family, I have no money, and I'm very hungry. And I said, well, we can help you tonight. I said, why don't you come join us? We're having a dinner party in here. And they had reserved a room for us, a banquet room in the back of the restaurant. So when Kelly and I made our way towards the restaurant, of course the manager greeted us. And when he noticed this lady who had been trying to get some food from the back dumpsters the past couple of days, he motioned for us to come in, and then he held his hand out like wanting to stop this lady that was with us. And I just gently said to the manager, I said, hey, it's okay, she's with us. I've invited her to come. And he looked startled. And so this lady came in, and we had our table, and we walked there, and there's a big long banquet table, and all of our friends were there, and they were all dressed in their Sunday best, suits and ties and dresses for the ladies, and we had our concert attire on, and so I sat her right beside me. And we had the most wonderful conversation. Now, when she got there, she didn't look like she was part of our party. She didn't look like she literally belonged. But she did belong because I, the guest of the party, had invited her. She was my personal guest. And as she sat there, we had the most wonderful conversation. She was on her very best manners. I was watching her, how meticulous she was, sitting up with her best posture. And she would take the right fork and the right spoon, and she would take her drink and put it down gently, and just had this pleasant smile. When the waiter came to take her order, I told her, I said, you feel free to get whatever you want. And she ordered a nice meal, and we had a wonderful conversation. She really became the central focal point of our entire evening. Everybody was drawn to her kindness and her personality. She was a wonderful person. And if we would have judged her on the outside, she would have stayed out there and starved to death. But I'm glad that night that God let us look at her with eyes of compassion and mercy, because she literally changed my life that night. I've never forgotten. And we even kept in contact with her. We helped her get placement with a job. The church pastor that was there, he helped her find some work. And the last time I heard that she was doing great. There's a character in the Bible that was the story is very similar, and I'm drawn to his story. His name was Mephibosheth. Now, he was an Old Testament character. He was the grandson of King Saul. He was actually Jonathan's son. And because the scripture, you can read it in Samuel, when after news came in that Jonathan and Saul were killed in the line of battle, the nurse, she fled, and the scripture says in her haste, he fell and became lame on his feet. It wasn't his own fault. The circumstances, because of the haste of the nurse, not waiting, she took off. And because of that hasty decision, Mephibosheth had to suffer his entire life. He was just a child when he became lame. So here we find him living in a land called Lodebar. And in the scripture, that is known with a land without bread, a land with no communion. And here, David becomes king. And he asks this question to all of his advisors: is there yet any in the house of Saul that I may bless and show kindness to? And they said, well, there is one guy. He's over there in Lodebar, in that desolate land. But surely, David, you don't want to go there. And he said, go and fetch him, bring him to me. And so he went out, and his people went and brought him into the palace of the king. And here he comes before King David in this royal palace, a place that he doesn't belong, doesn't look like he belongs. But David, the king, sent for him, brought him in. And here's Mephibosheth. Can you imagine this lame beggar of a man? He bows before the king. He says, what do I have to do with you? You're the king. I'm just like a dead dog. And David said, get up. I want to bless you for Jonathan's sake. Isn't that exactly what God does for us? He wants to bless us for Jesus' sake. He said, I want you to come, and I want you to live in the palace with me. You belong here. You're a part of the royal lineage. And not only that, I want to give back to you all that pertain to the house of Saul, the first king of Israel. Mephibosheth got the entire inheritance. This lame boy who was cast off into a land of no bread, no communion with God, he received this royal inheritance. Now here we find him. Now I want you to picture this as he's sitting there at the royal dining table, and we walk into that with our imagination. We walk into that dining room and we see all the king's advisors and the mighty men of David. And there at the head of the table is King David. And right beside King David is Mephibosheth, who was lame on his feet, has a seat at the table of the king. But you know what happens when you walk into that royal banquet hall? You see his position at the table with the king. But because of his position, his condition is hidden. What a beautiful picture of God's grace in our lives. Because of our position in Jesus Christ, his righteousness flowing in and through us, because of our position, our condition is hidden. Friends, what a wonderful blessing to be a part of that, accepted in the beloved. Believe that today. Live like you are a joint heir with Jesus Christ, like you are a child of the King. I believe our belief system, you have to know this and you have to believe it, and it will change your life. It will allow you to live a life of victory. You belong in the royal palace because you are royalty. Here's what the scripture says in 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 7. It says, David said unto him, fear not, for I will surely show thee kindness for Jonathan's sake, and will restore all the land of Saul, and you will eat bread at my table continually. And down in verse 11, as for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table as one of the king's sons. You are son or daughter of King Jesus. Be blessed today in his name.